Hi everyone, welcome back to another video, and we are going to be starting off a character profile and looking more into the lore of the Warriors of Darkness. Now, we have all heard the title, The Warrior of Light. I mean, if you played this long into the game, then you probably already know all about that. But this leaves the question of one has to ask, who or what are the Warriors of Darkness? Because doesn't taking the title of a Warrior of Darkness go against everything we fought for since the very beginning? Well, not necessarily. To put it simply, the Warriors of Darkness are the counterparts for the Warriors of Light, but that doesn't make it a bad thing. You don't normally hear the term of the Warriors of Darkness. I mean, sure, you've heard of the Warriors of Light plenty of times, especially in the Final Fantasy games. In fact, the first warrior from the original game didn't even have a name other than the one that you chose for them. Yeah, I do know that it was stated elsewhere later what his name was, but the idea of a counterpart for the Warrior of Light almost feels like it should be bad news. But let us look back on the brief history of the Warriors of Darkness before going into more of what the role the Warriors of Darkness have, formerly known as the Warriors of Light in the story of Final Fantasy XIV. Now, I should mention that this is a part of a series that's going to be discussing all the Warriors of Light that we were first introduced to as Warriors of Darkness way back in Heavensward. I'll be doing a separate video for each one of the members, and this is just the introduction to them in general. So, we have heard of the Warriors of Light since the very first game of Final Fantasy, but we didn't hear about the concept of a Warrior of Darkness until Final Fantasy III, where we meet them shortly before confronting the final boss in that game, which was the Cloud of Darkness. Now, just as the Warriors of Light had to defend their world from becoming engulfed by darkness, the Warriors of Dark were forced to defend their own world from being swallowed by the light many years before. By the end of Final Fantasy III, the party has to find their own dark counterpart so that they can aid them in their battle against the Cloud of Darkness, and each one of them did appear after defeating each one of the four bosses that were guarding the Dark Crystals. Sounds a little bit familiar, doesn't it? Yeah, that's the thing about 14, they just love to take pieces like from all the other games and just tie them in there. Anyway, after each battle, one of the Warriors of the Dark tells the Warriors of Light important information for the upcoming battle with the Cloud of Darkness. During the final battle, though, the Warriors of the Dark sacrifice themselves so that the Warriors of the Light can save their own world. Now, we definitely have seen plenty of antagonists and villains since then, but we don't see the term of Warrior of Darkness again until 14. We first learn of the Warriors of Darkness back in Heavensward, where we see Elidibus discussing about restoring equilibrium with the one he dubbed the Warrior of Darkness. In this case, that turned out to be Oddbert, who hails from the first shard of Norvrant. And he feels responsible for the light that's currently destroying his home, and he came to the source to try and force another calamity in the faint hope of sparing his home from becoming like the Void. I will go into much more details in a moment of their story, but to make a long story very short, after a battle with them, we come to understand each other, and Minfilia leaves the source to prevent the world from falling into the light alongside with the Warriors of Darkness. Now, we don't see or hear about the Warriors of Darkness again until the expansion of Shadowbringers, where we, as the Warrior of Light of the Source, have to travel to the First in an attempt to prevent the 8th Umbral Calamity. And therefore, in doing so, they take on the mantle of the Warrior of Darkness to defeat the abundance of light in the First and help the survivors in their fight against the Sin Eaters. During their time here, like the Warriors of Darkness that we first met them as, were originally the Warriors of Light of this world. They were once famed heroes who had accomplished so much, had done so much good, saved so many lives. But in the process of all that, they accidentally triggered the Flood, which pretty much wiped out almost all of this entire world, despite the fact that they ended up coming back to this world and sacrificed themselves and so much more to try to prevent the Flood from destroying whatever was left. They are still seen as the harbingers of doom, that it was basically their fault. That's what the people are kind of aware of. Granted, they don't know the whole story or exactly what happened. It's never really explained how the Flood of Light really initially started. All that anyone really knows about it, though, is that it was the Warriors of Light who triggered it. Whether they meant it or no, the fact is that they did trigger a flood that pretty much destroyed all but one continent left, and the survivors are constantly being attacked and bombarded by Sin Eaters day after day, and And they don't even have the relief of night to be able to kind of hide from all of that, because there's just a constant glaring bright sky right above them. All of this in their minds was caused by the Warriors of Light. That's why the term Warrior of Light is considered to be taboo. That's considered to be a great insult. Not long after arriving here, our Warrior of Light is quickly reunited with Oddbird, who has been wandering Norvant for a century as a shade. Time passes much faster in the first, after all. But Oddbird, he's pretty much a ghost here. He's not able to even touch or speak with anyone. He's not able to interact with anyone or anything save the Warrior of Light. However, he does accompany the Warrior of Light on their journey throughout Norvant to help restore the night sky, and he gains not only his sense of hope back, but he eventually finds a way to kind of make up for all that has happened. It's because of him helping the Warrior of Light out that they are able to defeat Emixelk and finally restore peace to this whole world. So, what led their journey to this, though? How did these once renowned heroes become known as cursed and hated for the last century in the first? What is their role in all of this? So, we're going to be having a quick look back at their history. So, we didn't officially meet up with them until Heavensward, which was way back in patch 3.1, but their story started long before that. We learn in Shadowbringers that they were the Warriors of Light from the first, and they were transported from the first to the source to make up for their mistakes. While we're in Shadowbringers, we see a good deal of Oddbird during this time, who plays the role of kind of like a ghostly mentor, and we're the only ones who can see them. Kind of like the kid from The Sixth Sense, I'm guessing. But after playing through the role quest, we do come to learn much more about the other Warriors of Light and their part in this journey. So you're the Warrior of Darkness, and you kind of team up with various Sin Eater hunters who hope to slay these beings as the Cardinal Virtues. These are powerful Sin Eaters who are made up of the bodies of Oddbird's companions with Valfrey's corrupting power. And it's through these quests that we come to learn much more about their origins and just what exactly happened that they were considered to be as heroes. Now, interestingly, these 5 resemble the adventurers in the game's cinematic cutscenes, just with their gear dyed black. Which, that alone is unique, because normally you can't really dye them that color. At least that's what Square Enix has made them so unique. So, there are 5 members of these Warriors of Darkness. Well, technically there are 6 of them, but officially there are only 5. Now, we have Oddbird, who we already talked about a little bit, and he acts as the leader. He's the representative as well as the counterpart to your character. But we also have Brandon, also known as the Knight of Darkness, and he was a knight charged to protect the Princess of Verbert, but became disgraced by betrayal. Next up is Ronda Ray, also known as the Ranger of Darkness, and she's the bard figure. And she was also the one who poisoned Alize during their initial confrontation in the source. When she was still in the first, she was known to be a legendary hunter who sought after the highest marks for the thrill. But eventually, a powerful hunt ended up killing her original comrades, and she sought revenge. Next is the Magus of Darkness, known as Nailbert. He and his best friend, a fellow elf, were considered to be the product of generations of arranged marriages to create exceptionally powerful mages born of mixed genetics. Though, sadly, his friend was at least temporarily lost due to a botched rift summoning, and he sought a way to try to bring him back. And then there's Lamette, also known as the Devout of Darkness, and so she's the dwarven white mage. While she was still in the first, she forsook her tradition to save her sister and other afflicted dwarves from a petrifying disease. And this is considered to be a big deal with the dwarves, because if you go against tradition, then you're automatically banished from your homeland. So she sacrificed a lot and all to save her sister and so many others, and her only reward was to be banished for that. There's also a 6th forgotten member known as Silva, who traveled with them. However, she turned out not to be who they first thought. Before we go any further, please be reminded that these are major spoilers up ahead, and if you haven't played through the role quests yet, you're watching at your own risk. Right, so these warriors, well, most of the group anyway, started off as relatively unimportant beginnings. 5 of these warriors were born on the first and eventually became adventurers, or maybe the term is more along the lines of hunters. But either way, they started off as simple adventurer-like people, just trying to make their way in the world before eventually rising to be called the Warriors of Light and fought against the Ascians. Now, Odbert traveled the land and met his friends one by one, starting with Lamitz, quickly followed by Brandon and Ronda Ray, followed by Silva, and finally Nailbert. So they started off as simple travelers, like I said, and so they roamed the land, helping people and fighting monsters. But the more that they battled, the deeper they found themselves in a hidden plot that was set up by the Ascians. Behind a series of unfortunate events that were sweeping across Norvrant, they found all of these terrible misfortunes upon the people were being orchestrated by someone known as the Shadowkeeper. So we'll look more into depth to what these events were and what led them on this path that caused the flood in the future videos. But for right now, know that the warriors were all accompanied by the elf swordswoman named Silva, who, unbeknownst to them, had her own dark agenda. She eventually revealed herself to be the Shadowkeeper, and by the Ascians' Mithron and Lodrith's instructions, was the one who manipulated Odbert and the others into becoming Warriors of Light and obtaining their crystals so that they could push the first to the brink of destruction and bring about the next umbral calamity on the source by killing her. In the end, they did manage to defeat Silva, but Odbert, who still cared about his friend, refused to kill her. Instead, they decided that they would hunt down both Mitron and Lodrith and just destroy them in the process. So that's what they did. They managed to hunt down Lodrith and Mitron and found a way to kill them. However, this result ended up pushing their world too close to the light, and that was what accidentally triggered the flood. Once they realized what they had done, they desperately sought a way to fix what they did and chose to listen to what the Ascian Elidibus had to say. In the end, he managed to convince them that the only way to spare their world from being consumed by light was to trigger a calamity on the source and activate a rejoining before it was too late. So they chose to sacrifice their physical forms, having believed that Hydaelyn had abandoned them during this time, and they traveled to the source to carry out their plans and hope that they could make it in time. However, it seems that the main reason that the Ascians wanted them to come to the source so badly was to kill our own character as the Warrior of Light. Kind of in retaliation for them helping to destroy Nabrialis, Aegeorm, and La Habrea. So Elidibus had them terrorize the Beastmen tribes to have them resorting to summoning ever stronger primals. Now we first see Odbert in the game at the very end of Heavensward, where we see Elidibus talking to him. But we as our characters don't officially run into him and the others until patch 3.1, shortly after they just defeated Ravana in the Smoldering Waste. In all honesty, I don't know if Odbert and the others were given specific instructions to kill the Warrior of Light. I think that it was heavily implied that that's what Elidibus wanted them to do, but despite everything that happened, I can't really see Odbert and the others really wanting to go out and kill a fellow Warrior of Light, especially knowing what kind of burden that title entails. The Warriors of Darkness do end up attacking them, but Thancred intervenes and they quickly decide to fall back, but not before declaring that they were the Warriors of Darkness and that they would meet again. You would think that that would bring about a lot more concern. However, this is where the Dragon Song War is kind of reaching its peak, and so we have bigger things to worry about for the time being. And that includes putting an end to Nidhogg's song, so we don't really have too much time to really think about the Warriors of Darkness, but we do see traces of them throughout the story from then on out, including seeing how they were the ones who retrieved Nidhogg's eyes from the ravine beneath the Steps of Faith for Elidibus, who later presents it to Ilberd and uses them to summon Shinryu, but that's a whole nother story. We don't run into them again face to face until 3.4, after Alize, who had been following them for a while, learns of their plans to force the beast tribes to summon their primals and was kind of caught spying on them. Thanks to Thancred, though, they did manage to get away from them in time, at least until Alize took an arrow to the shoulder from Ronda Ray and needed to be treated once they reached Ishgard. But thanks to Alize, we did learn a little bit more about what they were up to, and we had to make our way through Zilfatal, where the Exali were planning to summon Garuda. We hid inside with Alphinaud and managed to make it there in time before the summoning was complete and put an end to it before the Warriors of Darkness arrived. Afterwards, though, was when they did arrive, and Odbert reveals where they came from and their reasons for joining hands with the Ascians. Funnily enough, a disguised Urianger had also been accompanying them for a short while, as Elidibus was been trying to get him to join their line of thinking. So he was also there when Odbert revealed the origins to Alphinaud and our hero before leaving. Much later, it was Urianger who went to Odbert and told him that Elidibus wishes for them to continue their work, angering Odbert because he knows that time is running out for the first. So Urianger suggests that they could kill the Warrior of Light to bring chaos to the source instead. Man, it's always the quiet ones you have to watch out for. Anyway, with desperation growing, Odbert and the others agree in the end, promising that they'll at least make it quick, and all that Urianger has to do is lure them out into the opening. It is worth mentioning that the Warriors of Darkness don't want to be seen as villains. They hate that they have to come here to this world and they are trying to bring about another calamity. They hate all of that. They don't want to hurt these people. But at the same time, they don't really see that they have any other choice right now but to play the parts as villains. In their eyes, allowing their people to rejoin with the source is preferable to being swallowed up by the light. And looking back, there's actually a lot of reason in Urianger's suggestion. Eorzea's Warrior of Lights, at times it seems like they were the sole ray of hope that this land had left. If the Warrior of Light was to be killed, then they all knew that Eorzea would soon fall, because this hero is the only thing that's keeping the city-states all calm and from making hasty decisions in these uncertain times, as well as being a strong bond between the worlds of men to several different tribes of beastmen, helping to kind of keep the peace between them. So, should word of the Godslayer's death reach their ears, the other beast tribes would summon their gods once again and drain the land of Ether without worrying of the Godslayer coming in and killing their god. The Empire would wage war once again should they discover that Eorzea's greatest champion was no longer a threat. Fear and panic would spread through the streets. I mean, it's really incredible if you stop to think about it, but it would make a lot of sense. It would not surprise me if that's what happens. If the Warrior of Light does die, it could very well lead to another calamity. I mean, especially after playing through Shadowbringers and you learn more about this alternate future where the 8th Umbral Calamity did happen, you come to see just how important the Warrior of Light is to the people of the Source. It was described that the Warrior of Light, our Warrior of Light, was a torch in the darkness. Their stories were what kept the people going. They were what brought the people hope in like these darkest of times. And that's the whole reason that all of Shadowbringers took place, because they wanted to save the Warrior of Light and prevent this terrible calamity from happening. So that really shows just how important that these heroes are, just how strong and beloved that these people are. Not just the Warriors of Light, but the Warriors of Darkness. They were once seen as these great champions, as great heroes. Sure, that was completely disillusioned because of the flood, but it really wasn't their fault. It was stated that they were as much victims in this whole thing as anyone else. They felt true remorse. They felt responsible for all this, when really, I don't think it was their fault. I mean, they played a role in the whole thing in bringing about the flood, but it really wasn't their fault, especially the way I see it at least. But then again, what other choice did they have? They need to create another calamity to spare their people from becoming like these terrible sin eaters, and killing the Warrior of Light should be enough to bring about another calamity. And they weren't wrong. After confronting the group though, Urianger reveals himself and together they're able to defeat the Warriors of Darkness. However, in typical hero fashion, they refuse to admit defeat and they plan to use their crystals of light against us. But that is when Urianger's real plan finally kicks in, and he begs our character as the Warrior of Light to use one of their own crystals to bring them to the shores of the Ethereal Sea and secure a meeting with Minfilia. I should mention that despite all the crap that Urianger put them through, he never intended for the Warriors of Darkness to kill the Warrior of Light. He never meant for that to happen. He never wanted that. So there is no doubt that he is on the Scion side. Like, he is 100% ready to back them up. It's just that he could see the big picture, and he knew that there had to be something to be done in order to save not just the Source, but to save what's left of the First as well. And so thanks to the powers of the crystals who had been returned to Hydaelyn, she was strong enough to be able to release Minfilia, who agrees to go to the first and halt the flood with the others. Although Odbert initially attempts to strike her down, he does calm down enough when she explains that Hydaelyn had always been listening and promises she will not let the first fall to the light. It's really not much considering after everything that the Warriors of Darkness had to go through to this point. But it does seem that they are willing to at least try to place their faith in Hydaelyn one more time. Because again, what other choice is there? Surely this had to be a better alternative than become monsters and bring about another calamity, at least in their eyes. So that would be the last time that we would see them, at least for a while, where Odbert says their parting words and he asks that the Warrior of Light try to find a different path. He warns them about sticking too close to either light or darkness because in the end, it doesn't matter. Both of them are incredibly powerful and dangerous in the wrong hands. And even in the right hands, if you don't really understand how they work or what's really going on, then you are basically setting yourself up for disaster. So his last words are directly to our character as he asks them to just please try to find and seize a better fate than what happened to them. Immediately after leaving the source, they return to the first, where the flood is just about ready to swallow up Norvrant. So Minfilia uses her own powers that she got from becoming the Word of the Mother and was able to help halt the flood. While the Warriors of Darkness, though I guess in this case they return back to being Warriors of Light, give up what's left of themselves, like their ether, their strength, and they transfer it all to Minfilia, all to help her continue to try to halt the flood. All of them save for Odbert. For reasons yet unknown, Minfilia refused that Odbert sacrifice himself, and she doesn't really give him a clear answer to why this is, because she was able to accept the strength of all his other companions, and they were able to halt the flood then. But instead, all she says to Odbert that his time had not yet come. So I really don't know what she knew about Odbert. I mean, I think she was at least kind of aware of at least his connection to our character as the Warrior of Light from the source. But we really don't know how deep that knowledge goes. Nor can I rightly say if him adding his own strength to theirs would have made much of a difference. Though the light had left this world in a critical state, Norvrant was the only land left while the rest had been erased, leaving only the empty behind. Minfilia then began the cycle of the Oracles of Light, basically birth, death, and rebirth over and over again. As for Odbert, he was left as a shade where he couldn't be seen, heard, or interact with anyone, which began his long and lonely journey for the next 100 years, before our character as the Warrior of Light is able to come to the first and eventually takes on the title of a Warrior of Darkness themselves. While Silva, the original Shadowkeeper, eventually comes to the Crystarium to become a humble tavern wench. As for the bodies of the Warriors of Darkness, save for Odbert, they were eventually discovered and turned into Sin Eaters by Volfrey's hands. So, directly underneath the Wardens, these guys were probably the most powerful Sin Eaters, the Cardinal Virtues. These are empty Sin Eaters who could only wander the land aimlessly, as they are subconsciously driven by the desires they held when they were alive. Looking just like they did in life, but now pale imitations of the people they used to be. The exception, like I said, being Odbert, whose body was discovered much later and eventually used as a means to an end by the plans of the Ascians, whatever they may be. And so that is the basic history that we know of the tragic tale of the Warriors of Darkness. And I can't help but feel bad for them, especially after everything that they did, all that they sacrificed. They are seen as villains. And so that is very difficult to really accept, like really difficult to watch. I remember playing through the game and just felt so bad because I knew the whole truth and they didn't deserve to be treated like that or to be remembered in such a way. However, their tale is not yet over. At least until this last bit of Elidibus's plan is finally finished and set to rest. We don't know exactly what Elidibus is planning by using the guise of a former Warrior of Light to try to spur other Warriors of Light into action, but I can say with great certainty that there is no way that this can come to any good means. Alright, so that looks like it's it for now. Thank you all so much for watching. This is just a brief introduction to the Warriors of Light and the Warriors of Darkness of the First. And like I said, I don't believe they were ever villains, but just ordinary people who tried so hard to do good, to be good, and then it just went horribly wrong. I find their stories to be tragic ones, and they deserve to be looked at more and understood. Anyway, this is just the first of my series of the fallen heroes of the First. I will be dedicating separate videos to each of the Warriors of Darkness, which means all 6 of these heroes. I will be getting at least the 4 Cardinal Virtues out before 5.3, leaving Oddbirds and Sylvel for last. But I will be hard at work with the others, and I hope that you'll be looking forward to the next one. So that's going to be it for our storyline for right now, but I promise you that the next Warrior of Darkness will be coming up very soon. So until then, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day.
So, let us be about it, hero.